Hey, folks, I'm just going to share my opinion again, my opinion on this whole Ukrainian mess. Okay. I'm going to jump all over. I rant sometime. I'm going to probably jump all over. I hope you can keep up with me because I don't know where it's going to go. Okay. When this whole Ukraine thing started with Putin and Zelensky in the U.S., okay, we hear so much. I hear these talking heads and especially former military. We got a lot of lieutenant colonels and stuff on certain platforms and programs. A lot of former intelligence guys, CIA stuff like that. And I used to listen to that, and maybe they have a point. But then again, I have to hear what they say when they're talking about how smart Lavrov is the best foreign minister in the world. Putin is the best leader in the world. They're like Putin apologists or propagandists, if you will. Now, I used to be in support of this, and I started really, really looking into this. Okay. Zelensky's people, Ukraine and Russia, went to Turkey. This is a couple months after this war began. Okay. And they signed a lot of agreements, Russia pulled troops out of the suburbs of Kiev as a show of faith, a sign of faith that they weren't going to go into Kiev. We're going to pull them out. Okay, so there's agreement. As soon as the Ukrainian team comes back, one of their guys, one of their negotiators, is killed by people. People say by Ukrainian security forces. They didn't like this guy, but they killed one of their own people that was actually in the first meeting. Okay, now you got to keep in mind that Lavrov was supposed to walk on water. Putin's supposed to walk on water. But all it took to put the kibosh on that agreement, or the agreements that they were implementing, and it looked like, a deal was going to go through. Boris Johnson, Boris Johnson goes over there and puts the kibosh on it. Now and Boris Johnson's always been ridiculed. He's a joke. He's a clown. This, that, and the other. No respect. He didn't last long as prime minister. But that's all it took. All the great Sergei Lavrov, the great Putin, and all of that, they couldn't counter Boris Johnson. Maybe they didn't want to. Maybe they didn't want the deal to really go through. Maybe this was just theater. Okay? Because of Lavrov and Putin, that team couldn't counter Boris Johnson. Send an envoy, send a group, send a team to Zelensky, to whoever. Say, hey, let's keep this going. We can counter what they could counter whatever. Okay, they didn't try that. They saw Johnson went over. The agreements fell by the wayside, and they continued in the military operation. Okay, there was no attempt. There's nobody that can tell me. Putin can show up when he's in a public arena. Can show up the documents. Oh, look at here. This was signed. This was signed. But when Boris, that's all it took to control or to direct world defense. Boris Johnson, that's nonsense. Nonsense. Okay. And another point. Just go look at what Trump's doing. He wants a mineral deal. Okay. He hates to see the death and destruction in Ukraine. That's nonsense. He wants to go in there so his buddies can get the mineral. We're told, well, it's going to help the American taxpayers for all the money that was spent. First of all, most of the money that was spent in Ukraine went to the military-industrial complex right here in America. Okay, and all Trump wants is the minerals, almost like gas. He wants to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East, huh? He doesn't have a problem seeing death and destruction there. Doesn't have a problem seeing death and destruction in Yemen, huh? About ready to, threatening to launch death and destruction in Iran. So that's not a peace president, huh? The only reason why he wants the war to end in Ukraine is to get the minerals. So Ukraine is being looted on both sides, and has been looted for the past 3-4 years. Looted because they've lost 600,000 or 700,000 of the military personnel. Okay, because their towns and cities have been bombed, and because they've lost probably 10 million in the population. Okay. That fled across the border. Okay, so that right there, all that money that didn't go to Ukraine didn't go to Zelensky. I'm sure Zelensky's a crook like he's accused of, but all these American politicians, including who's the one, Lindsey Graham, boy, that guy will flip and turn over 30 under the bus in a heartbeat. But all those people running over there and shaking hands with Zelensky, Zelensky's coming over here and they're all hugging him. Now, of course, they changed their tune because Trump's in office. Now they want the resources. But all that nonsense, all the kickbacks and corruption and so on, it's got nothing about not wanting to see the destruction. It's about minerals going there and looting what BlackRock and everybody else hasn't already got their hands on. And let's go to Putin. The people in Donbass, the Russian speakers, the ethnic Russians we hear so much about, guess what? They're sitting on resources too. Okay, that is a resource-rich area. Okay, it took Putin a few years because the Donbass people asked Putin for help, for assistance, and he wouldn't do it. But imagine over time, all of his people said, "Hey, look at all the resources. Used to be owned and controlled by the Soviets, but hey, let's go and get it." Okay, and so I guarantee the deals, and even Putin said, we got plenty of resources if Mr. Trump wants them. And so that's what they're doing, the Trump people and the Putin people, wheeling and dealing with the resources of Ukraine. Just another operation to loot on both sides. I want to make another point for these people that are Putin apologists and think Putin walks on water. Russia has a bunch of newspapers. They've got their own media. They got newspapers. And every article doesn't say, "Oh, wow, the economy's doing great," so on and so forth. Putin walks on water. Baby, people are complaining about the cost of food increases, so on and so forth. They're complaining about the governance. They seem to keep electing the same group of people. Okay. So those are things to those that, people are going over there and meeting with Lavrov so they can listen, if Lavrov was such a fantastic negotiator, was the best foreign minister in the land in history, then he could have negotiated with Ukraine. Boris Johnson couldn't have blocked it. But they want the natural resources. And guess what? We here in America, military-industrial complex, you're getting all the money from the taxpayers. Guess what? Russia's got a military-industrial complex, private businesses, and they're wheeling and dealing. Maybe they don't want to stop the war because they're manufacturing and selling to the Russian government them 155 artillery shells or whatever. The fighter jets that they got, they're rolling them off. The tanks, they're rolling them off. Okay? So people that think Putin walks on water and he's so fantastic, they couldn't, when the Minsk agreements fell by the wayside, they couldn't renegotiate. They couldn't move in there and get this thing going with France and Germany and Ukraine. No, because they wanted it to happen. Okay, they saw it falling by the wayside. We hear from some of these talking heads, these former intelligence people, and especially some of these lieutenant colonels. And I know they've been in the business for 20, 25 years. Some of them got doctorate degrees. They write books and all this stuff. But to sit up and think that Russia couldn't get, first of all, they say, "Oh, hey, some of these Ukrainian military officers are actually ethnic Russians. Putin has got, they get intelligence almost on a daily basis from these people in Ukrainian military. Yeah, right. But these same people couldn't go in and negotiate. The great Mr. Lavrov and the great Mr. Putin couldn't turn around situation to where they could get back on track with peace. They didn't want it. Military industrial complex in Russia is just as greedy as the one in America, Germany, France, Britain, anywhere else. Okay. So they pushed this thing on. Okay. This thing should have been, if you're going to go in, this thing should have been over in 2 weeks. Okay. And let me go back to another thing. Since I'm here, since I'm going on it, all these talking heads talking about the death ratio between Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers. Some of them say, "Oh, it's 6-1 on a particular website." I don't want to bring that website up, but people that are on YouTube and see all this stuff, you kind of know who I'm talking about. And if not, maybe later when I find out. I don't want to attack someone, and stuff like that, because people have a right to their opinions. So I'm not going to attack the channel that they're on or attack them personally so much. But we heard that 6-1 ratio, KIA between Russia and Ukraine, the 6 being Ukraine, the 1 being Russia. Then they went up to 7-1, 7-1. Then there's another one, Pepe Escobar. I'm going to use his name. Was on a channel. He says, "Oh, it's 8-1. It's 8-1." Well, Putin, out of his own mouth, during the last St. Petersburg Economic Forum, okay, in St. Petersburg, Russia, Putin held a question and answer period with foreign journalists, okay, and he was asked that about that ratio, and out of Putin's mouth, he said it's a 5-to-1 ratio, okay. It could be worse than that, 5-to-1, not 6, 7, and 8-to-1, okay, 5-to-1. And of course, if you believe Putin, because of course he would never lie, he's a leader of a massive country. He got a lot of powerful influences, and he wouldn't lie to the public, of course. But even taking that 5-to-1, if you go by some of these talking heads in the U.S., 700 Ukrainian soldiers dead. If it's 5-to-1, then that's 140,000. Okay, Russians. Though there's a talking head that says, oh, it's 80,000. Russia's lost 80,000. Nonsense. Out of Putin's mouth with the numbers that these people are giving, 700,000, that's 140,000. There are Russian newspapers that said it's 150 to 200,000. I believe them in Putin before I believe in any of these talking heads. And it's almost insidious that some of these same people that work, especially in intelligence, they may have worked in specific regions of the world, their area of interest. But to now run over there to Putin, he walks on water. Okay, let's go to the Kursk. I'm jumping around. I told you it's a rant. Okay, so hang with me. Okay, we heard about Kursk, right? Oh, it was this, that, and the other. Oh, they should have kept their people on, on the front. Zelensky is he's moving people over there. Then they say, oh, it's the talking heads again, the Western talking heads, the former military, lieutenant colonels, and CIA people, and they're saying, oh, it's just what do they use? Let me see. I don't want to use the people's names. It's just a hiccup. It's just a nuisance. And then we heard, oh, they're being slaughtered. The Ukrainians being slaughtered. They'll be done. It's just a mopping up operation. It's just mopping up. The Russians are mopping up. Yeah. Then I hear 10,000. First, it was supposed to be 10, 15, 18,000 Ukrainian troops went in. Okay. And then I hear 10 to 20,000 Ukrainians have been dead. They've done 1 or 2 prisoner exchanges in Kursk. Prisoner exchanges with the Russians. I'm saying if they're 10 to 20,000 dead, how many? I thought that's all there was. It should be done. Oh, then we hear, well, maybe 40,000 Ukrainians in there. Okay. Then the number went up to 50,000, maybe 60,000. Okay. But then I hear from a lieutenant colonel says, it doesn't matter. It's only forest. There's only forest. There's nothing for them. It's only forest. The Russians will contain them. Look at some of the recent pictures of the Russians. The Russians have been. The towns, good-sized towns and villages and small cities that are damn near leveled. Okay, but anyway, we hear that they got, the Ukrainians are done. The Ukrainians are done. How long have the Ukrainians been in Kursk? Almost a year now, isn't it? Huh? Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to say this to you. I don't care how you feel again. We heard so much about Zelensky's going to fall. Okay. Oh, they're going to get rid of his military. Is going to get rid of him. Okay. We hear that anytime now, this should be over. Some of those talking heads, lieutenant colonels especially, Christmas of 2023, they were talking about by Christmas, like the September, October before Christmas 2023. Oh, it ought to be over by then. Then it's 2024. And then I think this summer or fall, Lieutenant Colonel Doug McGregor, I like him. He's a sharp guy. I just don't agree with everything he said. But he is. I mean, he stepped up. He raised his right hand. He went to work, so yeah, I can't knock him for that. I certainly not. But I was in my mind a little disappointed because he kept saying, oh, it should end by this. It should end by this. But he was on with Judge Napolitano. And he did say, I think it was like maybe August, September of this past year, 2024. And he says, I really don't know. He said, we thought it should have been over, but they keep getting new life, So he did, he wasn't going to make any more predictions. And here we are. We're in March. It'll be April pretty soon. Now to talk about next Christmas. But anyway, I want to say something. Zelensky, no matter what people felt about him. And I certainly didn't think he was ready for the job. He was a comedian. He was an actor. But I'm going to tell you what, you can like it or not like it. That daggone guy has withstood and stood up to pressure from within his country, within his government, within his administration. Okay. I don't like that the guy always wears khakis. Okay. I think it's a sign of a little bit of clownery. Even when what was he meeting the G7, G8? What was it? Something in Europe. He wearing that same outfit, and everybody else he was there by himself. Everybody else is, dressed to the occasion. But there may be a reason for that. I mean, I know there's a reason for he wants to. He's a war president, wartime president. Okay, I got that. And I'm going to tell you something else. The Ukrainian soldiers. I'm not talking about the Nazis, because the Nazis were just a small portion of it. I'm talking about the Ukrainians, whether they were forced into it. Hell, we used to have the draft, same thing. They come to your house. You don't think so? They come to your house years ago during the Vietnam War for you to show up with the secrets of you know what I'm saying, sign up, selective service. Okay, but anyway, I'm going to tell you what. Ukraine is depending on America and Europe for funding and for all weapon supplies. All Ukraine is making right now, I think, is maybe drones, and they may have a couple repair shops. Okay, and they weren't a wealthy country anyway. They didn't have a lot of money at the beginning of this. Okay, they have to wait for funding. They have to wait for Congress to decide. So Johnson can say, well, if America, we're not going to pay attention to the border. We're not going to assign the money to go to Ukraine, right? So they hold all that up. It's not just Jim. The Germans, the French, the Italians, the Spanish. Everybody's got to go through a process. So yeah, people say, oh yeah, but they get all the NATO weapons. They got all the NATO weapons. They got to wait for it. And there's strings attached and this, that, and the other. Okay, and they're broke. Okay. Russia's got its own military-industrial complex, got its own operations, got its own money, got its own supply chain within. They're not importing anything, okay? And they've got the money, okay? And it's going into the fourth year, and you can't whip the Ukrainians, okay? We're moving. We keep hearing, they took another village. They took another village. You got a military of 3 million people. And you got all your own hardware, your own factories, okay? Solid training bases, training facilities. But yet at the same time, the talking heads that want to bend the knee to the Russians, the U.S. talking heads, huh? How come? I don't care what the numbers are in Ukraine. How come that Russians haven't finished this, huh? We hear from someone that was a couple of years ago, of course, was saying, well, Putin doesn't want to take all of Ukraine because they're all brother Slavs. They're all Slavic people. So he doesn't really want to do that. But yet he done killed 700,000 of their military, bombed their cities. That doesn't mean anything. Who he's Slav, they're Slavic, they're brothers. That's nonsense. Okay, nonsense. Because the Ukrainians don't feel the same way, evidently. Okay? When Russia makes a strike, Ukrainian strikes, Volgograd, or when they sent drones to Moscow or hit some of those oil refineries, oil facilities way out, a couple hundred miles out, hit a couple air bases with drones. Huh? Then they hit fairly recently, I said within the last 6 months, a major weapons depot in Russia. It was supposed to be bomb-proof, and they hit that. But when the Ukrainians send something in, it's terrorism. It's terrorism. Look at what they're doing. They send drones to Crimea. Look at what they're doing. Yeah. And yet the Kinzhals and all the other missiles flying in Ukraine, that's supposed to be okay. I'll tell you what. I don't like Zelensky, but I got to call it as I see it. That guy has withstood a lot. A heck of a lot. People want to belittle them. Think again. And to the Ukrainian soldiers that are fighting for their survival of their nation. Okay? I got to give them credit. The numbers may be crazy. It could be 5-1. It could be 4-1, because what president doesn't, kind of play with the numbers? Could be 3-1. Okay, but even 5-1, the Ukrainians still haven't given up to this day, to this minute. No matter what you say, I got to give the Ukrainian military, those soldiers, I got to give them kudos. because they're standing up to a military that's a lot mightier, a lot more well funded, better equipped, better supply chain. Don't have to wait on others. And the Ukrainians are still standing up, still standing up. And I got to give him credit. Trump treated Zelensky wrong. It was a setup. He had all the audience standing around, all these clowns standing around like a bunch of Cheshire cats. Huh? He disrespected Zelensky. Now, yeah, I think Zelensky should have wore a suit wherever you go. You don't do that and try to humiliate someone. And then, well, you got to give us this and you got to give us that. We're not going to give you anything unless you let us loot your resources. That's all it is. That's all it is. Okay? And it's a shame. The Ukrainian people have been through enough. If I was Zelensky, and of course I'm not, he should have called Putin himself and said, hey, that's it. Let's end this now. You don't need America to come there to negotiate for you, but you put yourself in that position, and it's not too late to change. Call Putin. Quit being a clown. Call Putin. Say, hey, can I come to you? Let's end this, and so so Ukraine can maintain some of its mineral wealth and not have BlackRock and all the other looters coming in taking their stuff for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Okay. So he needs to do that and quit looking for someone to do it for him. You've been looted. You owe the governments, you owe the weapons manufacturers billions, stuff that you keep 30, 40, 50 years, and now you want to give away the resources that can help you pay those bills. You want to give them away for a song because you know you're not going to get market price for any of these resources. Anyway, that's what I got to say on this one. I appreciate you listening. Subscribe, give me a thumbs up, whatever, how that works. But this is only my second or third, fourth video. I'm just in the mood for chit chat. Anyway, listen, folks, thank you. Please be safe. Have a good night.